What's going on, everybody? We are back, coming at you live once again. We got another UFC card to break down. There's never a dull moment in the world of mixed martial arts. UFC San Diego today. Very exciting. Dominick Cruz, one of the greatest bantamweights, consensus greatest bantamweight to ever do the damn thing. He's back once again, 37 years of age, looking to get back in title contention. Wouldn't that be something? At his age, with all that he's dealt with in terms of adversity, but he's got a very difficult challenge in front of him. His name is Chito Vera. He's got that immigrant mentality. The guy came from Ecuador. He's not here to make friends. He's not here to be a nice guy. He's here to beat people up and take their hopes and dreams and everything they work for. So it's a great fight. It's a great matchup. It's not the world's greatest fight card top to bottom, but I think there's some good betting opportunities. I think there's some hidden gems among the cards. So without further ado, guys, we're going to talk about all these fights. We're going to do it in rapid fire fashion. Appreciate everybody who's here rocking with us. And I hope that you guys all have a great opportunity to bet on this card. Now, with that being said, just want to mention all my stuff, all my content, it's brought to you by PrizePicks, simplest game in DFS. If you guys are looking to get involved, they've got projections for all the UFC fights today. They've got projections for PFL, for other mixed martial arts organizations, as well as daily fantasy offerings for all the major sports, MLB, NBA, NFL, all that kind of stuff that you're looking for. So if you're looking to get involved, go ahead. The information's in the description box below, and you can use my promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. Now, guys, that being said, let's start at the bottom of the card. We're going to work our way all the way to the top, and we're going to try and fire through these fights pretty quick, get you guys in and get you guys out, because the fights do get started here at 4 o'clock p.m. in the East. So first fight of the night, Yusuf Salah, my boy, he's back in the UFC. You know, it looked like he was on the fritz there for a while, might have gotten cut. Blackshear, a very talented guy from the regional scene around here, Beast Coast, Northeast, a lot of tough guys, CFFC. He's been winning some fights. He's got credible losses on the regional scene. He's got some less credible losses early in his career. He was quite green when he lost the Chris Mutino fight, for example. So I think that this is an interesting fight because Salah has not been at this weight class since he was an amateur fighter in 2017, I want to say. So it's been some time since he made the weight class. I'm curious to see if his physicality translates down at 135. At 145, he did struggle at times to deal with people who are a little more physical, a little bit more dangerous at times, especially in the grappling positions. Ilya Taporia comes to mind. Sung Woo Choi had a lot of grappling success as well based on his size. And Sean Woodson, that's a fight that could have went either way, but he's kind of a striker primarily, and Zalal wasn't fully able to integrate his grappling in that fight. His volume has been a little bit low at times. So for me, I wasn't inspired to lay the chalk here. There's a little too many question marks for me on the Zalal side, but I'm rooting for him to get back on track because, it sucks to start your UFC career 3-0 and then go on an 0-3 run and be on the verge of getting cut. So hopefully he can keep his job. I think Damon Blackshear will win UFC fights, but he's taking this fight on very short notice. So I don't know exactly how high he projects here. I think the more likely athlete to get the finish is probably Damon Blackshear. I think that if it's a close, hard-fought decision, I could see Yusuf Zalal getting like a split decision victory in this spot. So ultimately, that's going to be my prediction. I think it's going to be very nip-tuck, back and forth, and maybe the cardio, the fact that he's been preparing for this fight against Christian Quinones, I think he was originally scheduled to fight. I think that ultimately will pay dividends here for Yusuf Zalal, but I'm not counting out Damon Blackshear. He's a tough guy. He's been very active as well, so maybe his cardio checks out and he's able to, make a big splash in his UFC debut. Now, that being said, guys, we've got a fight that, I haven't gotten any bets down on this. I'm actually going to check and just see if the line has moved at all. It probably has. Yeah, but not as much as I would have thought. Okay, so, Josh Quinlan is taking on Jason Witt at 170 pounds in the next fight, and this is a bout that was rescheduled. So if you heard my thoughts, last week, basically feel the same way, don't love the, context, the surrounding circumstances, the popping for steroids and this and that. But I just think Quinlan, he's got power. I think he should be able to keep the fight upright for the most part. I think he's got a decent sprawl. I think he's got decent defensive wrestling instincts. So if he's able to keep this fight upright, I don't trust Jason Witt from a durability standpoint. Am I anxious to go lay a minus 275 on a UFC debutant off the Contender Series? No, I can't say that, but do think that inside the distance, he'll have a decent path at beating somebody like Jason Witt. I don't know that Jason Witt is along for the UFC in terms of the organization. Kind of an awkward build. Even the fights where he's doing well, I've seen him just completely drop the ball. I bet on him in the Phil Rowe fight. Everything was going according to plan. And then the first punch he got hit with cleanly in the second round, he really started to go down. So it was tough. And for me, that's the kind of thing that, it's ultimately enough to keep me off. I would be on Quinlan inside the distance, or I would just pass on this fight entirely. I think that people who are targeting the fight not to go the distance, I don't hate that look either. I just don't know how much finishing upside Jason Witt has. He did look more intense than Quinlan at the face-off, so maybe he's going to bring the heat. But I think that Quinlan, a little bit better hardware, a little bit more durable, a little bit better able to take damage on the return. I've seen him, take a couple shots and give them in his regional fights, and I just don't know that Witt could do that at this stage. He's had a lot of fights, and I think that the miles have kind of caught up to him. So give me Josh Quinlan by first round finish. We can move to the next fight here. We got Buday Osborne taking on Tyson Nam. This is a fight that I truthfully don't have the strongest take on. I think that Buday Osborne rightfully favored. There's just some physical advantages that are hard to ignore here. He's the much taller guy. He's longer. He's going to have the reach advantage. He's going to be younger by a considerable margin here. And Tyson Nam, he is a guy that is a little bit older in his career, 38 years of age in the flyweight division. Not something that you typically see. He does look like he's, showing up in shape. I like that from him. I think that, he's one of these guys, he doesn't really show age as much. He does show 3 knockout losses in his lengthy mixed martial arts career, but it's been a while since he's been knocked out. The problem for me is in the book Fightnomics, it talks about how 38 years of age tends to be that cutoff point where fighters start to get knocked out more often. And I don't like to see that, in terms of guys that I'm looking to back. So if you're looking for an underdog that has a chance, maybe he is one. I do think that Buday Osborne has slowed down a little bit in his previous bouts, but I think he's a more dynamic finisher. I think he's got more dynamic movement at this stage of his career. I think that Tyson Nam's a little bit more plodding, a little bit more stationary of a target. So ultimately, I do think that Buday is going to find a finish here, but I'm not super confident on it, so no bets on this fight for me. Yeah, shout out to everybody in the chat. We got a lot of the Pub Sports Radio guys in here. Got Solar Warden, Twitter legend, in the building as well. Shout out to Solar Warden. Shout out Tristan, Philip V, Jake. Appreciate all you guys so much for being here. Jay as well. So thank you guys for stopping by. And if you guys have thoughts, if you agree, disagree, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Interested to see what you guys have to say. So next up for me at 155 pounds, we're going to talk about Gabriel Benitez and Charlie Ontiveros. My BetMMA.Tips history, if you guys track on the site, you can go through and look at, your history of betting a fighter. There's not many fighters that have like a clean, just all green record. Sometimes I take shots at for and against people. I'll switch sides on fighters because I'm looking to find the right time to invest, the right time to fade. And, in the case of Charlie Ontiveros, I've just faded. And so far, it's been very profitable for me. I think to the tune of a little over 5 units profit betting on Charlie Ontiveros fights so far. And it's been fading him. I bet Kevin Holland in parlays as a big money line favorite. I was very confident in him in that fight. That was a huge, weight discrepancy from what Charlie Ontiveros was used to. And now we're seeing instead, Ontiveros is taking on a former featherweight. So I do think that that's an interesting size dynamic, but neither one of these guys is great at taking damage. I just think that the more efficient one at dealing out damage historically has been Gabriel Benitez. I think he's shown a little bit more well-rounded tools. He doesn't wrestle a lot. If you are expecting him to go out there and try and push a wrestling heavy game plan, it's really not what he tends to do, but he does show 2 submission wins in the UFC by guillotine choke. Has a nasty grip on that choke. So I think that's why people are seeing an angle for him to win the fight by submission. I do think that Charlie Ontiveros shows all of his losses by knockout. But if you go back and watch the footage, some of those fights where he gets hit with a shot and he's really badly damaged. The Steve Garcia fight, he took a lot of damage. He was bloody all over the face. But some fights, he kind of like calls it himself and says like, I can't do it no more. I don't want to fight anymore. And so that's, the next best thing to a submission. If somebody locks a choke around you, it's basically the same thing if you're looking for a way out of the fight. So it's a lot of juiced props on the Benitez side, a lot of heavy money line favorite, but that's one way to potentially try and snipe value to look for one of those wider submission lines. But also this fight, it's a little bit weird. They haven't released props fully across the market here. They've been very slow to draw on that. So for me, it's just a little bit of a tricky market. Under 2.5, or excuse me, under 1.5 is juiced over -225, -245, -250 in a lot of places. And that was just too steep for me to get involved. So I think that it is a good spot for Benitez, like kind of like a get right spot, in my opinion, trying to get him back on track. But maybe he's not able to get back on track. That's the other concern, So I think that if I was throwing together, a long shot degenerate parlay for the event, maybe Benitez sees my tickets that way. I do think he is the side. I think he's going to win the fight. But do I want to go out there and make a huge investment, lay a lot of chalk on the Benitez side, only to find out he can't take a great punch? No, I don't want to find that out. I think he's going to win the fight. I think he's a much better fighter, but I don't want to pay to find out at a huge chalk price, on a fight card like this. So shout out to Jay. Thank you so much for the dono, my friend. Means the world. And I love talking fights. So glad to see 82 people rocking with us live here today. And we've got plenty more fights to break down. So we can do that. A fight I'm not excited at all to break down, but I will reluctantly, is Nina Nunes and Cynthia Calvillo. Any fight that gets canceled and rebooked is something that I hate betting on. It's not to say I won't do it. I just don't like it because the bookmaker gets all the advantages, right? They get to see what time everybody wants to bet what, at what limit, where the sharp players are, and they get to remake their line. They get to go get a do-over. They get to cut all the tickets that they wrote at bad numbers. And so let's say, a lot of sharp customers were on the favorite. Now you move the favorite line 30, 40 more cents. Yeah, maybe a lot fewer people are interested in getting involved in the number now. However, the dog backers maybe that weren't as sharp, I'm just throwing out examples, maybe, they come back on the other side. That's the kind of thing that the bookmaker can entice people, move the line 30, 40 cents. Now the people who are on the other side, they're like, wow, I'm getting a great price. I got to jump back in. And the people who are on the favorite or who are on the right side, they say, oh, the line's moved against me. Maybe I just let this one go. It's not to say that's a perfect formula. Bookmakers will mess with you. They'll do, a lot of different tricks to try and keep you guessing. But I do think that's one real advantage that they have systemically in this fight. And so in terms of the stylistic matchup, Calvillo, her wrestling game has not translated very well at 125 pounds, but she was going against a physical beast in Andrea Lee. She could not get, close. She was really having a hard time with the physicality, I felt. I don't know that Nina Nunes is going to offer those same things, but she does look like she showed up in good shape. I think Calvillo got some of the right work in here, looked like she was at a lot of boxing gyms, looked like she was also working on her wrestling, working on her grappling in her camp. But I want to kind of see it to believe it with Cynthia Calvillo. At her best, she's very dangerous. On top, she got a 10-8 round against Marina Rodriguez, put her in some trouble, went for some good ground and pound, put her under duress. Granted, she missed weight for that fight, but I still think that was an impressive performance. A lot of women really struggle if they do take down Marina to get any kind of significant top time or to make it, count. And she was able to do that. She did a really great job there. So I think that Cynthia Calvillo, if she fights at her best, can win this fight, should be able to mix in the takedowns, mix the game up. But based on recent performances and the line move, right? Last fight out, I think, I was more tempted on the Calvillo side. It was like -135, -140. Now it's -190 on Cynthia Calvillo, and that's for me completely unappealing. So yeah, this is a pass fight for me, and I might be cooking some steak. I might be busy during that fight. You know what I'm saying? I'll catch the highlights. But the next fight I think could be pretty entertaining. It depends how it shakes out. But Łukasz Breski, I kind of had one idea of this guy in my mind, and then when I went back and watched him, it's a little bit different than I remembered. The Dylan Potter fight, I just remembered him gassing badly, and he did. At like the 3-minute mark, the guy's like open mouth, filter feeding like he's in SpongeBob. Not a good look. But he ends up throwing like 190 something strikes in that fight and dominating Dylan Potter with basic wrestling holds and using the 3/4 Nelson and pretty aggressive ground and pound to put Dylan Potter in a lot of duress. Now, granted, if you guys watch that fight, it's one of the weirdest endings. Like Mark Smith, I don't know what he was thinking there. He kind of just like jumped the gun. Like the guy locked up what looked like it might have been a finishing rear naked choke. And all of a sudden, Mark Smith just calls the fight and it's like, wait, I didn't tap. Like Dylan Potter just looks at him. He's like, I never tapped, dude. Like what, why did you stop the fight? So it was a really weird stoppage there. And prior to that, Breski, he's not always taking guys out in the first round. He's kind of had to go to these low-paced, kickboxing matches at times with guys in the regional scene where he's bullying them a little bit into the, the side. Is he going to be able to do that against Buday? I kind of struggle to see that a little bit. Buday, my problem with him is that I think at space, he's a little bit defensively void. He, in his own right, is a little bit green coming from that regional scene. But I do think he's one of the top Slovakian prospects. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a much bigger guy in this spot. He's not coming back off a PED suspension. He's got more UFC experience under his belt and more reps at this stage. And for me, I just have some question marks about Breski. He's coming back off the PED suspension. Like I mentioned, his body looks physically different. I thought, he kind of looked very soft. He looks like Alexander Volkov. I forget who in my group chat was saying that. But I think that's, he looks like a thinner, flabbier version almost of Volkov. And I think that could be somewhat effective. But I think if there's a guy who's just going to press you into the fence, use his big body, and then try and take you down like Buday, I think that's just not a good combination right now for Breski. He showed off good wrestling against Dylan Potter. Not sure that that's going to translate here. Breski, not quite on the same level of a grappler that Buday is, in my humble opinion. So I think Buday is going to get this job done. But again, two guys relatively green in their career, some question marks on the Breski side. He's been away for a while, could have improved his skills, and yet you're being asked to lay the minus 300 on the Buday side. I think that if you got in on Buday early numbers, I think my man Andrew Gombas said he got in like minus 210. Yeah, that's probably a great spot. You get in, you get the closing line value. But I think that at this stage, maybe you just let this one go on the Buday side. However, what I will say is that Buday by submission, I think it's like plus 800. And I get it. It's a, heavyweight, light heavyweight type of fight. Most guys don't even go for submissions, but this guy does have like ADCC credentials. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, and his opponent can crack on the feet. So if he's got, two brain cells to rub together, he's probably going to look for takedowns in this spot. I think that his cardio is superior. So if he's able to outlast his opponent, maybe it's an attritional ground and pound stoppage. Maybe he latches onto the neck and the guy looks for a way out of there. So I think at that big kind of plus money number, that would be something that would get, a little sprinkle from me maybe before fight time. But otherwise, I'm probably just going to pass on this, more volatile heavyweight fight entirely. So that being said, guys, we've got Angela Hill taking on Lupi Godinez at a catch weight of 120 pounds. That's going to close us out on the preliminary card here. And, this is a fight that the more I looked into it, the more I hated the prospect of betting on it. Now, let me walk you through what I mean. Lupi Godinez, somebody I'm quite high on, right? I mentioned in past videos, past breakdowns, she trains with her sisters. They're Canadian Olympic level wrestlers. They're training on the World and Olympic cycle in Canada. Now, Angela Hill, historically, she's struggled to deal with some wrestling, some grappling onslaughts. She's lost a lot of close decisions. She's getting up there in age. She's 37 years of age. But I started looking into the bout, and Angie looks like she's in pretty good shape. She looks muscular. She looks physical. says she's been doing the WEC method. She's been going to, all these strength and conditioning coaches. And she looks, like it's paying some dividends. Now, it's also a catchweight bout of 120 pounds. It's also a fight that they moved up on really, short notice here for the Loopy side. And if you look at Loopy's career, what has cost her historically in the UFC? She shows up prepared for a fight. She mostly dominates. She absolutely beat the ever-loving hell out of Carnelossi in her last fight. And similarly, she went out there and put a number on Silvana Gomez Juarez. I think people forget, because she got the submission there, that she was busting her up on the feet. She was throwing great combinations and getting takedowns with ease there, just reaching out for a double leg, sitting her to her butt. But Angela Hill in this fight could become a problem if she's able to keep the fight upright for large portions. One of the things I don't like about Godinez is even in a dominant performance, she's gotten her nose busted up on more than one occasion. I thought that she won the Jessica Panay fight, who, by the way, is a teammate and training partner of Angela Hill. But I thought she won that Jessica Panay fight, and they gave it to Panay on the scorecard because she gave up a couple boneheaded grappling, mistakes. And I do think that for all the grief that we give Angela Hill, she is now at the stage in her career where she's had a lot of grappling experience. I was stunned that she did not get submitted by Verna Jandiroba, especially with the amount of time that they spent grappling in that fight. I bet Verna inside the distance in that fight. And Angie impressed me a little bit with her defense, with her resolve. And I hear a lot of people saying Angie's going to retire this week, which I think is a possibility. But I just don't know that it's set in stone. I listen to Angela Hill's interviews. It doesn't sound like that at all. It seems like she's still committed to her career, committed to competing. So maybe that's not true. But that's the vibe I'm getting from her. And, it's one thing when I'm laying the minus 220 on Loopy, but this is now minus 400 territory. And I think that my man Locker Room is making a great point, right? Hill is, like a 500 fighter. So she's not great. But the quality of competition has been quite high, especially in this recent run where she's been losing. She lost a lot of close fights here in this last run. And, some of those wins have aged okay. Some of those losses have aged okay. Amanda Lemos, very close split decision loss. A lot of people thought she should have got that nod. Not me. I thought that was a 29-28 for Lemos. But, again, she's competing tooth and nail there. And I think that Loopy, to her credit, does throw hammers on the feet when she's throwing, but sometimes she doesn't throw enough. She does get a little bit complacent at times at distance, and it was 2 short notice fights that she took, her UFC debut and that fight against Luana Carolina on a quick 20-day turnaround where she underperformed. I thought my expectations for her top line projections, I think at her best, Loopy Godinez is one of the best wrestlers in the division, and I think she can really, dominate women. I just question if the UFC was being, creative with how they booked this out. It was supposed to be, I think, in October, and they moved it up really short notice to Angie's backyard at a catchweight bout that I think, Angie is the one that she would prefer the catchweight. So those are the kind of things that I'm just going to stay, away from this fight. I wish everybody who's taken sides the best of luck. The other problem I had here was just Loopy is getting a ton of action, and I expected to see more tickets on Angela Hill. But right now I'm seeing 23 tracked bets. And this is just a small sample size, a small smattering on BetMMA.Tips. And on the Loopy Godinez side, there's 60 bets. And she is one of the more parlayed athletes on the card. So I think Loopy wins the fight. I think she's probably going to get the decision here. But just didn't feel as confident coming out of tape to lay the hammer with my girl Loopy. There will be plenty of opportunities to do so. And if she wins this fight close or if she loses the fight, I think she's going to be undervalued again in her next bout. So I'm just going to wait for a better opportunity to support my girl. I think that this is a tricky fight. The one other thing that stood out to me is both ladies have been talking all week about prioritizing a finish. It's women's strawweight. You don't see a lot of finishes, but Lupi Godinez, the one loss she shows inside the distance is actually via armbar in the amateur scene. So I don't think that that's what we can expect to see here, but I do think it's at least a slim possibility. Angela Hill's been working with high-level grapplers for a while, and I thought she showed her best form in the grappling to date against Verna Jandiroba. Granted, not saying much. She did get dominated there, but I think Verna is a different level of black belt than most women in the UFC in any division. So I think all in all, should be a great competitive fight. And I hope that Lupi Godinez just smashes her and comes away with the submission. She's one of my favorite prospects in the division. But I do think Angela Hill is going to come out here and make it a dogfight and try and put on a show for the fans as well. Her local fans, I think she's going to get a lot of crowd support. So if Angela Hill finally gets a split decision to go her way, I just don't want to be crying over spilled milk. That being said, guys, next fight up, we got Gerald Meerschaert taking on Bruno Blindado Silva. And this is another guy who I got a soft spot in my heart for him. You know, I bet Gerald Meerschaert a lot in the UFC, including that Macman Muradov fight. I was going ham in the casino, having a great time, and everybody's looking at me like as their parlay was blown up. So I understand why people like the Gerald Meerschaert side, why they find value on his line in this situation. Bruno Silva, I do think he has had a UFC run categorized by beating pretty low-level fighters overall. Andrew Sanchez, talented guy, did come from the Ultimate Fighter pedigree, and he had, I think it was NAIA wrestling credentials, so he obviously had skills, but he kind of slowed down in the third round of a lot of fights. So, Santos outlasted him and was able, Silva, inserted generic Brazilian name, Bruno Silva, he did a great job of finding his shots in that fight. He put some damage on Andrew Sanchez in every round, but his takedown defense looked horrific, and he gave his back in a lot of instances. The other thing about Bruno, sometimes his aggression is what leads to his success. Sometimes his aggression is what leads to him getting his back taken for the first 4 minutes by Wellington Turman. It's like, I do think that in most of his fights so far, we've seen him in disadvantageous grappling situations. And against Gerald Meerschaert, that's tricky, especially when we're talking about big chalk. But the one problem with Gerald Meerschaert's game is that he really doesn't move his head very well. He keeps it on the center line. It's pretty stationary. And for a lot of his career, he's been willing and able to tough it out, take big shots, and keep coming forward. I do think Bruno's the wrong guy to do that against. He hits like a Mack truck. And so I think this is a tough fight for Gerald. I'm rooting for him, as always. My man, GM3. But I think Bruno Blindado is probably going to clean him up, probably going to find a knockout shot. I think that if he goes for a submission attempt and fails and ends up underneath, Bruno Blindado Silva has some of the nastiest ground and pound in MMA. So, yeah, I think Bruno's a scary guy, but it's another one of these instances where I just don't know that I can get behind this huge chalk price when I think Gerald Meerschaert is like probably the most battle-tested, proven UFC fighter he's fought. Pereira is the most dangerous guy he's fought, and he survived that, but he brings a much different threat. This is a guy who's stuck around in the UFC for a very long time. He's fought a lot of credible guys. He's fought a lot of really tough guys close, even in fights that he lost. So I think Gerald Meerschaert is a fun fighter. I think he's a great action fighter. I just think they've got a tough matchup for him here. Will say this, though. Trained at Sanford MMA for this fight. Looks like he's in better shape than he's been in for a lot of his recent bouts. So I'm excited to see, the best of Gerald Meerschaert. Let's say maybe he'll move his head in this fight, but I can't believe it until I see it. So got to pick Bruno Silva here based on the logic, but root for my man GM3. Next up, we've got Ariane Lipsky taking on Priscilla Cachoeira. Speaking of fights that the bookmaker has had another chance to reline, I think that to be short and sweet with this one, Priscilla Cachoeira, I think, is a pretty underdeveloped MMA fighter in terms of her overall skills. I think it's good to see that she mixed in some offensive wrestling in her last performance. She's at least trying to improve her skills, but I don't think that she has the grappling upside in this matchup. I would think that that's pretty soundly with the Lipsky side here. She does have a knee bar finish over Luana Carolina. She has an armbar finish over Diana Belbita on the regional scene as well. So I think that, the queen of violence here, if she's smart, she's going to come out here. She's going to mix in takedowns. She's going to try and get on top. And I think that would be, a really smart game plan. I think that would be how she maximizes her win condition in this fight. I think if she decides to trade back and forth on the feet with Priscilla Cachoeira, she has some power. She's got some good timing. She's got a little bit of pop, but her defense leaves a little bit to be desired. And I think sometimes, her heart and her toughness and her willingness to continue the fight leaves a little bit to be desired. So for me, fun matchup. I think that I'm glad it's getting done. I'm glad they moved it up to 135 so these ladies don't have to cut the weight again. But I was more tempted on the Lipsky side before she missed weight. Now she missed weight. The line has gone increasingly in her direction. Despite that, they moved the weight up to 135. I think that I got to favor Lipsky. I think she's going to win. I think she might even win this fight inside the distance. I wouldn't be surprised if she submits Cachoeira. She does show 2 losses by sub. Lipsky has a dangerous submission game in her own right when she's not being pummeled from somebody on top of her. So give me Lipsky to go out there, find a takedown or 2, and win this fight. But not uber confident. Next fight up, Azamat Murzakanov. Guy I backed in his last fight. He, talk about making me sweat, right? Really, really gave me a sweat there. And then Devin Clark on the other side. I would imagine anybody who's ever bet a Devin Clark fight knows what it's like to sweat because this guy is there to be hit sometimes. I do think he's made improvements in his form, in his punching mechanics since he went to Elevation Fight Team. And I think that could only be to his benefit long-term in terms of his professional career. However, he's a little bit more of like a journeyman type of guy. I'm not sure that he's going to get a push up the division here. It's possible, but I think that Azamat Murzakanov is the kind of guy that the UFC likes to market. Does have a lot of wins by finish, does find ways to materialize these crazy moments, big uppercut, flying knee. And, last fight out, he was able to find a big moment like that on Tafon and Chukwi. And I thought that it was a pretty impressive performance. He had been off for a long time. I think he might have been dealing with some ring rust there. But the problem I have is, I think somebody mentioned it in the chat earlier. So, forgive me if I missed your name there. Go ahead and shout yourself out and get in the chat. But I think that, one of the factors here is that Murzakanov could probably make 185. So he said that he likes to hang at the 205 weight class so he can say yes to short notice opportunities. But Devin Clark, keep in mind, is a guy that was just fighting at the heavyweight class in his last bout. So he's dropping back to 205, but he's a big fellow. He did look a little bit bigger than Azamat at the face-offs, at the weigh-in. But Devin Clark seems like one of the most popular dog picks of the week. It's not to say that makes him, a dead dog, but it just means to me, super, super popular underdog. Line's not flipping. Line's not moving that much. It's kind of stuck around between like plus 150 and plus 125. Let me double check so I'm not speaking out of turn in case there's any late moves here on best fight odds. But right now I'm looking and I'm seeing, minus 148 still available on sharp markets on Azamat Murzakanov. It seems like domestically across U.S. markets, he's being bet down minus 150, minus 161. So, yeah, it's starting to see a little bit of movement towards Azamat Murzakanov. To be honest with you, the line movement does remind me just a bit of his last fight because Azamat Murzakanov, I think I bet him minus 148, minus 152, something like this in his last fight. I think he closed closer to like minus 200 or something, and that's something I could also check on best fight odds. Yeah, he closed minus 227 to minus 180 range. So I think that we're going to see late money come in on the Murzakanov side here. He's a dangerous striker. He does a decent job of digging underhooks. He's shown an ability to fight for 15 minutes regionally. He does show knockout wins regionally over impressive UFC level fighters as well. So I think he is a older guy. He's not going to project too high in the division because he's coming in as an older prospect. But I do think he's going to be another one of these guys who's a fun action type fighter. Devin Clark, a little bit more clinching. He did get a knockout in his last fight, but a lot more clinching, a lot more wrestling, a lot more stalling out, a lot more competitive, grindy based decision type fights. And, Mirzakhanov, he's going to be in a lot more barn burners, where he's there to be hit at times, but he also swings back with heavies. He's got a dangerous left hand, and, he'll mix in, diverse offense like that flying knee. So shout out Asmat Mirzakhanov, cashed me a nice bet last time out. Wishing him luck this weekend. No bets on the fight so far, but if I was to get to a side, it would be Mirzakhanov. If that line drops, minus 135 or something like that, if it continues to get steam on the Clark side, maybe I would consider getting in on the Asmat side. Now, the next fight up, this is really compelling in my opinion, this fight. And a lot of people, probably not as tuned in with this one. It's a strawweight bout between two UFC debutantes. We've got Yasmin Jauregui. I'm trying my best. I hope I did okay there. And then we also have Yasmin Lucindo. And this is a Mexico versus Brazil prospect battle. On the one side, we've got a 23-year-old. She is sporting a undefeated record. She comes from Entram Gym. She is a very talented competitor. She has heavy hands. She throws in combination. She's got, nice low kicks, diverse shots. She breaks clinches with an elbow. She does a lot of things right. I've seen her taken down. I've seen her cheat for your money. She grabbed the fence, pop back up to her feet. I've also seen her, do the more traditional pin your back to the fence, wall walk a little bit up the fence, put your hip to the side of the fence, pop back up to your feet, and then turn, cut, and face. So I think she's done a lot of the things I wanted to see from her on the regional scene in terms of making improvement over time, in terms of being aggressive, in terms of throwing a lot of volume, in terms of having power in women's MMA, in terms of her condition, her cardio, checking out in the fights that went a little bit longer. Now, neither one of these ladies has faced like full resistance yet, I would say. On the other side, Lucindo, she's lost 4 fights, 3 of them inside the distance, but I don't think she's lost since she was like 18 or 19 years old. So she's very young. She's only 20 years of age coming into this fight. And I think that that's almost a little too young, right? You've got Yasmin on the other side. She's 23. She looks, like she's been cut from stone, right? She's very, very physically strong. Her opponent, first time making it down to 115 pounds, I think. She was at 121, 125 for most of her regional fights in Brazil. Looked like she had a little bit of baby fat on her, respectfully, just a little bit younger in the game. And I think she's starting to slim down a little bit, but I still think, the physical maturation process has a lot, still to undergo on that side. And she's got, more professional fights, and she's the younger fighter. That's an angle I have historically liked to target. But everything I saw from Yasmin tells me that she's a very dangerous fighter. When girls tried to wrestle and grapple with her, she was hitting counter throws. She was defending the takedown. She was getting on top. She was much more physical than most of her opponents. She was brutalizing them with big shots, and a lot of them were running away, looking for a way out, looking for takedowns, getting desperate, and she did a good job addressing that. So I think that, Yasmin Jauregui was the A side here. She was brought in for this fight. Short notice replacement in Lucindo. I think she's a very talented fighter, and I think she will win UFC fights. She will be back. But at 20 years of age, I think it's biting off a lot here. I think it's asking a lot of her to go get this win. A lot of pressure, 20 years of age. So give me the favorite here. I think Yasmin Jauregui is going to secure a victory, and I think she's going to do so inside the distance. I think she's going to overwhelm her opponent with a heavy volume of strikes. I think she has a path to getting on top of her as well with those counter throws, with those counter takedowns. A lot of what Lucindo does is pretty basic, stepping outside trips. She does a good job of doing it to both sides of the body, but I do think that it's going to require a little more sophistication in terms of wrestling at the UFC level. So I like what I've seen so far from Yasmin Jauregui, and I'm going to see what she's able to pull off. So next up, we've got David Onama taking on Nate the Train Landwehr. This is a good fight. David Onama, he's shown chinks in the armor. Definitely a beatable fighter, a guy that can be beaten. I did bet Mowgli Benitez against this guy, And Mowgli went out there, landed a lot of heavy strikes, closed his eye, and then he got put down bad. So, I did learn my lesson a little bit, right? Which is that this guy's very durable. David Onama could take a punch, man. And he got his eye swollen shut, and he did not back down from that fight at all. He kept swinging, and he buried it, So that was an impressive win. Was able to deal with a little bit of adversity and fire back. I like to see that. And same thing in the Armfield fight, right? Armfield, short notice replacement, guy who's got, every reason to want to come kick your ass. He already beat him one time before. Granted, he is from a weight class down, but Armfield went out there, nothing to lose. He was swinging hammers. He was trying to take him out. Onama realizing this, he says, what's the path of least resistance? Takes him down, gets on top of him, dominates him physically, cashes me a plus 500 wins by submission. So shout out my man, Just Win Baby, told me he thought that was a great spot, and I thought so too. This fight, though, Nate Landwehr, he's not coming in on short notice. He did a full camp. He prepared at MMA Masters, away from his family. A lot of hard work, sacrifice, and preparation went into this for Nate Landwehr. So I don't want to count him out or discount his chances. I think he's a tough guy. I think he can come forward and throw heavy bombs. I think he's going to get in the pocket and swing with Onama. And I think ultimately that's the problem in this fight is I think Nate can be extremely competitive. I think he can land good shots. I just don't think he could take the shots from Onama that Onama can take from him. And durability is not always fair. It's not always nice. I think that maybe skill for skill, maybe experience for experience. Nate Landwehr is a better fighter, but I think the intangibles, the physicality, the gifts, the X factors on the Onama side will be enough to carry him through this victory. But I will say there's a fade spot coming at some point on David Onama. I'm just not sure Nate the Train is the one. So for me, I'm going to let this one go. I'm going to leave this one for other people. I thought that there may be even some value on Onama to win the fight by decision, but Nate the Train has been knocked out in a couple fights in the UFC. He does have that fan-friendly style where he's going to get in the pocket and swing, and Onama's got a lot of power. So I think it's very possible, man, that David Onama gets the finish, but plus 330 on a big favorite to win the fight by decision against a tough guy like Nate Landwehr, who really put a lot of time, effort, and energy into this camp and should be showing up in excellent shape. For me, that's a really compelling fight, and I can see why they made it the co-main event of the evening. And guys, that brings us to the main event. So I am going to be dropping my main event breakdown for you real quick and getting out of here because I know that we all got to go watch these fights. We got to get ready, last-second preparations. So just wanted to thank the 120 people rocking with us live right now. Truly appreciate that. Everybody who's lighting up the chat right now, thank you guys so much. Anthony, Understanding Boxing, Butt Thompson, Joint Smoker, appreciate all you guys. Nathan Brown as well. And shout out my man Jake Fagan. Do what he said. I'm not going to strong arm you, but do what he said. Smash that like button. Go ahead and help me out. If it's your first time here, go ahead and get subscribed because each and every week coming at you with great content, talking about Contender Series, talking about the UFC fights and everything in between. Interviews with fighters like my man Blake Perry, cashed as a plus 700 underdog, came on the show and told y'all to bet on him beforehand. So, hey, I think that a lot of great content coming your way in the near future, and I truly appreciate the support. That being said, main event breakdown. I'm going to be short, sweet, and to the point. I like Dominick Cruz, guys. I bet on Dominick Cruz in this fight. I think he's a hell of a fighter. I tried to fade him once. I went with Casey Kenny. I said, this guy can't do it. He's not coming back. He's not going to be, able to get off the horse with all these injuries and be beating modern MMA fighters, young guys that are on the come up. Casey Kenny, in that case, a judo black belt, I believe, had a judo background, good hips, not an easy guy to take down, throws a decent volume in his own right. I felt like this was a tough fight for Dom Cruz, and it was like plus 110, I think, on Casey Kenny. Man, had to eat my words, right? Dom Cruz came out there. He looked good, clearly won that fight, deserved to win it. Okay, then he's going to fight Pedro Munoz. He's plus 110. I said, I can't let that pass me by. This is Dominick Cruz. The guy has all the skills in the world. The guy is not easy to beat in the decision period. And I don't think he's going to be easy to put away. Pedro put a big shot on him. He dropped him badly. And I saw him recover like an absolute champion. He went to his wrestling instincts. He locked a hold of a sit-out Peterson, and then he composed himself, got back up, and started swinging in the pocket again. He is an absolute dog. I think that Dominick Cruz is the kind of guy who will fight for your money. I think that he's the kind of guy who thinks about every opponent, who brings in a unique game plan, who has a very high fight IQ. And I think that his skills and his physicality have still been translating. You know, people have been talking about he can't secure takedowns in his recent bouts. Guys, how are you supposed to take down Pedro Munoz when he's got the best guillotine in the division and some of the best jiu-jitsu in the weight class? It's like, you don't want to. That's the point. You might mix in the attempts to get him thinking about it, to mix up your striking to get the timing off, but you're not going to try and commit to a takedown, because if you do, you'll end up like Rob Font, going to sleep. I think that, people might have just misunderstood that. Same thing with Casey Kenny. What, you want to commit all your energy to trying to take down this young guy who's got judo hips, that really doesn't want to get taken down by you? No, probably not. What's the difference here? Chito Vera gets taken down. He doesn't offer as much resistance. He's comfortable fighting from anywhere. I think that could be a problem here. What's another problem? Chito Vera is a little more plodding. He's a great fighter, but he's a little more stationary. He's a little more static. He's a little more heavy on his feet. Dominick Cruz is a lot more light on his feet. He creates angles. He moves around. He dances. He dices. I think that's a difficult guy to deal with. Truth be told, I think Dominick Cruz is one of the better fighters at the 135-pound class today. I don't care how old he is. I think he's still got the best skills. I think he can compete with anybody. I think the guys that will take him out are probably guys that will be able to completely neutralize his grappling offense. Somebody like a Henry Cejudo, right? You're not taking down Henry, right? Not somebody like Dom Cruz. He's not taking down Henry. So, okay, what's he going to do? He's got to be perfect in that fight. He can't even mix in his other elements of his game. So he had to be perfect there. And what is Henry? One of the best game planners, one of the best athletes, one of the best connected guys, one of the hardest workers. It's like Henry Cejudo is an all-timer, and people don't want to talk about that either, and that's fine. But Henry Cejudo is an elite athlete, and Dominick Cruz shows losses when he was sick, injured, and everything else against Cody Garbrandt, but he doesn't bring up all the excuses all the time. He just moves on with his life. And then Cejudo. Who's beaten Henry Cejudo recently? Nobody can raise their hand. The guy's a stud. The guy's a killer. And when Cruz got dropped by Henry Cejudo, when a lot of guys would look for a way out or quit, this guy found a way back to his feet and was yelling at the referee about booze and cigarettes. So if I'm looking for somebody who's going to fight for my money as a plus 200 underdog, it's Dominick Cruz. I'm going to the well with him. It's a home match for him. I think the crowd's going to be all over him on his side. And I think that he's going to move like Cruz. I think he's going to probably be able to grit out a close, grimy, split type of decision over a very game Chito Vera, who I respect, who I admire, who cashed me a nice ticket in his last fight out, but who I think is a class below Dominick Cruz at this stage. He's still young. He is still developing. I think Chito Vera will one day get to those top 5 ranks. I just think this is a stumbling block for him. He's had it happen to him before against the Jose Aldos of the world. And I think it's going to happen to him again on Saturday night against this guy, because I just think that Dominick Cruz is one of the best fighters I've ever seen. I think that he's one of the smartest fighters I've ever heard talk about fighting. And I think he might be able to put on a vet lesson in this performance. But he's got to be careful, because Chito Vera, like I mentioned off the top, he's not here to make friends, guys. He's a very dangerous fighter. He's extremely aggressive. And if he knocks you out, he's not going to, come check on you and see if you're okay. He's going to style on you. He's an aggressive dude, and he's earned his place in this division. He's a very tough out for every fighter, period. I think Dominick Cruz has enough. I think he's going to empty the tank if he needs to get this win. So give me Dominick Cruz. Give me Cruz on the money line. Not going to get too cute with it for 30 cents, 40 cents, 50 cents on the decision prop. Think the decision is the most likely outcome here. But it's a hell of a fight. It's a hell of a fight card. And we're all done, guys. Less than 50 minutes, but we've broken down every fight. I truly hope that you guys have gotten something valuable from this. If you feel like you did, drop a like on the video. Tell somebody about the show. Go ahead and get yourself subscribed and read my work. I did a full preview of this card, every fight, written breakdown on rotogrinders.com. And I write a lot of other articles. So, guys, if you're ever interested in my work, check it out. You can find me also Delphi Sports. I do a lot of extensive note-taking on these fights, minute-by-minute notes on a lot of the fighters on these cards, especially the fighters you've never heard of. I have minute-by-minute notes on Lucindo fights, on Yasmin fights. It's like I really try and do my due diligence. So if you're ever interested, all that information is in the description box below. I mentioned it before. The show's brought to you by PrizePicks, simplest game in all of DFS. If you're looking to make a deposit, use my promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. Gives a little bit of kickback to me, and I truly appreciate your support. So thank you guys. God bless you all. Good luck with all your bets on this card. Make sure that you enjoy those fights and come back next time. We're going to have all the same fun again. Take care, everybody. Good luck.